In the heart of India's tranquil countryside, where earth-red paths wind through endless green paddy fields and the dawn rings with the chorus of birds, there stood a humble thatched house. Within this modest shelter lived a small family, a widowed mother and her only child, a boy named Ramesh. Ramesh's father had died young in a labor accident, a blow that changed their world. From that moment, his mother alone bore the weight of survival, enduring sun and rain, day and night, never once voicing complaint. Her hands became cracked and worn from endless household chores for wealthier neighbors. She washed clothes in the river, fetched water from the well, swept and cleaned the market lanes, doing whatever task would earn her a few rupees to buy her son's books and pay his school fees. She herself could not read or write. And yet, each day as she sent Ramesh to school, she would whisper the same unwavering plea. Ramesh, study hard. Only through learning can you escape poverty and change your fate. Young Ramesh listened well. He was diligent, obedient, and bright-eyed. He would sit for long hours before battered textbooks, hunched under the faint glow of a kerosene lamp. Outside, the wind would blow sharply at the fragile walls, and inside, his mother's persistent cough echoed quietly through the night. At those moments, Ramesh's greatest wish was simply to grow up quickly, so he could earn money and bring comfort to his mother, who toiled so selflessly. The years rolled onward, and soon Ramesh stood at the threshold of his greatest test, the university entrance examination. It was a rare thing in their impoverished village for any child to make it this far. Most boys his age were working the fields already, resigned to a simple, unchanging life. Whispers followed him wherever he went. Some neighbors doubted, others were bemused, but a few carried deep hope. Against all odds, Ramesh sat for the exams, his every answer shaped by memories of long nights, sacrifice, and dreams. When the results came, the whole village flocked to the market to get the news. Ramesh had earned a place at the most prestigious medical college in the capital. Never before had such joy swept their village's dusty lanes. Ramesh's mother wept with happiness, clutching her son so tightly she could barely speak. On the morning that Ramesh left for the city, she pressed a cloth pouch into his hands. Inside were only a few cold rice balls, a handful of coins, and a letter written with the help of a kindly neighbor. Go, my son. Your mother will always be here, waiting for your return. City life greeted Ramesh with both awe and hardship. The world of the university was grand, dizzying, and intimidating. His classmates came mostly from wealthy families, dressed in fine clothes and confident in their urban ways. Ramesh, by contrast, quickly discovered that survival here meant relentless struggle. Every weekday he woke before dawn, splitting time between daunting medical classes and a succession of menial jobs. He washed dishes in a busy restaurant, mopped hospital floors, scrubbed hostel corridors, and waited tables at boisterous banquets. Some of his classmates laughed at his ragged clothes and calloused hands. Others ignored him altogether. But Ramesh never allowed pride or shame to distract him from his purpose. When exhaustion threatened to pull him under, he would think of his mother hunched over in the fields, cheeks weathered by sun and sorrow. That image steeled his resolve. He pressed on, driven by a dream greater than comfort or rest. One day, during a crucial examination period, a classmate found Ramesh asleep at his desk, head bowed, books scattered around him. With a sneer, the boy said, "You live like a servant. Do you really believe you can achieve anything in life?" Ramesh only smiled, soft and unfazed. In his eyes flickered an unwavering passion. "I just want, someday, for my mother to live free from hard work." 5 years passed, followed by a 6th and then a 7th. Each year was marked by perseverance and sacrifice. However meager, Ramesh sent a portion of every month's savings home, trusting neighbors to help his aging mother. He wrote her simple letters, assuring her that he ate well and was healthy, though the truth was he often skipped meals and bore illness alone. He reminded them to see that she wore warm clothes in winter, visited the doctor when she felt unwell and had enough to eat. And yet, As the years wore on, his mother grew thinner, her hair grayer. Loneliness and age wrapped themselves around her like a fog, and her once bright eyes began to dim. Every vacation, Ramesh raced home, cradling his mother in his arms and filling their nights with stories, adventures from the hospital, laughter with patients, the struggles and victories of learning medicine. It was during these visits that he first noticed a change. Where once her sharp gaze met his with joy, now her eyes searched his face in confusion. She would reach out, her hands trembling, to trace his cheeks and clothes. It was as if she could no longer see him clearly. With each passing season, her vision worsened until, one day, she awoke to darkness. The village doctor delivered the news with quiet gravity. Her corneas had degenerated almost beyond hope. As a medical student, Ramesh knew better than anyone the implications. Without a transplanted cornea, she would remain blind for the rest of her days. Late into the night, Ramesh weighed every option, his heart churning with grief. Gazing at the thin, tired outline of his mother, he made a decision as astonishing as it was courageous. He would donate one of his own corneas to her. For many, this would seem unthinkable. He was now on the cusp of becoming a doctor, a future dependent on sight and skill. But to Ramesh, the choice was clear. He approached the hospital where he was interning and made his request. The teachers who had once laughed at the poor student were silent with awe. His classmates, who had dismissed him, looked at him now with new respect. They saw not only his humility, but his boundless love. The morning of the operation dawned quiet and cool. Side by side, Ramesh and his mother lay in adjoining hospital beds. He had not told her what he intended, only that he would remain by her side. As the anesthetics took hold, he thought of the many years she had seen the world only to work ceaselessly for his sake. When the operation ended, his mother awoke first. For a moment, she was confused, her world still shadowed. Then, slowly, light returned, a shimmering curtain of color and shapes. When she turned, her eyes focused on the young man sitting at her bedside, a fresh white bandage covering one side of his face. Then, in an instant, she understood. Tears spilled down her cheeks. She reached for her son, voice shuddering with disbelief and love.
"Why would you do this? I am not worthy. My son, my son."
Softly, Ramesh pressed her hand in his own, voice gentle and warm.
"Mother, you gave me both your eyes all my life. Now it was my turn to help you see the sun again."
From that day forward, Ramesh's mother saw the world with new light. She watched dawns break over the village fields, the sun pouring gold on ripened rice, and the simple joys of daily life. For Ramesh, now with sight in only one eye, each detail of the world stood in high relief. Yet in his heart, no sight was more radiant than his mother's smile restored. Determined not to let hardship slow his pace, Ramesh returned to complete his medical residency. His reputation soon grew, not just as a skilled doctor, but as a man of unswerving compassion and integrity. Hospital administrators, colleagues, and young doctors in training all looked to him as an example of what it truly meant to heal. Years passed, and Ramesh became not only a physician, but a symbol, a living legend among students. At every new academic year, the university principal would stand before assembled freshmen and recount the story of the boy from the countryside. A boy who once washed dishes and carried buckets, persevered in the face of scorn, and finally gave his own sight to his beloved mother. Students new and old listened in rapt silence, their imaginations captured by the strength and selflessness woven into Ramesh's journey. Meanwhile, in the quiet village where it all began, life changed irrevocably. Ramesh continued to care for his mother with the devotion of a loving son, ensuring her every need was met. People from neighboring villages traveled far to see her, to hear her account of a child's love that knew no limit. The villagers, once uncertain, now held their heads high, proud to call themselves neighbors of the great Dr. Ramesh. Children who might never have dreamed of higher learning now pointed at their humble houses and told their parents, "One day I will be like Ramesh." Yet for all the recognition, Ramesh never let pride take root in his heart. When young doctors approached him for advice, he would humbly listen, draw from his own experiences, and encourage them to remember every sacrifice made by their families. Skill is forged by perseverance, he would say, and a true doctor is built from love. When the harvests were poor or winds swept away crops, Ramesh organized aid for the villages. When a child fell ill, he would return home to treat them, asking for nothing in return. His generosity, once forged in adversity and fueled by longing for his mother's happiness, now radiated outwards to embrace a wider community. As years advanced, Ramesh's mother lived out the rest of her days in the warm embrace of her son's love. Each morning she would sit in the sunlight outside their home, watching the world in gratitude. When village children approached, she would run her wrinkled hands over their hair, her gaze tender, reminding them always to study, to persevere, to never forget the ones who loved them first. And so the story of Ramesh lived on, not as an extraordinary legend of a hero, but as a quiet, steadfast reminder of a son's devotion and a mother's boundless patience and hope. For Ramesh, everything he had done was only what any loving child would do. Long after their names faded from the records of the city hospital, and long after their house was replaced by sturdier brick and tile, the villagers continued to tell the story. They spoke of the boy who carried hope on narrow, winding paths to the city, of a mother who lit his way with courage even when her eyes grew dim, of a sacrifice that brought light not to one, but to many. Years later, the children who had once listened to tales of Dr. Ramesh grew up and faced their own struggles, exams ahead, homes behind, dreams pressed tightly to their chests. When exhaustion pulled at them, or when laughter from others filled their hearts with doubt, they recalled Ramesh's journey. They remembered the gentle smile of his mother, the stitchwork of sacrifice, and the quiet certainty with which he walked, always forward, always with love as his compass. And somewhere between the golden fields and the distant city spires, a legacy endured. A legacy spun from resilience, devotion, and the power of a dream carried not by one man, but by the hopes of all who had ever been told to reach further than their circumstances would allow. For at its core, the story was not only Ramesh's, nor his mother's alone. It was the story of every parent's dream, every child's courage, and every human heart's longing to heal and be whole, to see the world bathed in sunlight together for one bright, fleeting, and precious lifetime.